Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
There are questions about what comes next, and the Iranians are starting to make new demands. Iran's Supreme National Security Council issued a fresh statement this weekend calling for the United States to permanently end the war and compensate Iran for damages before the strait would reopen. This does come as Iran's foreign minister says even if a deal is reached, it doesn't necessarily mean the strait will stay open.
We have been discussing the temporary route, and we are very close to reaching a conclusion. Work is being carried out based on the maps of this route. Prepared by the armed forces, negotiations have taken place between the navies of the two countries, and the details are being finalized. I believe we will be able to conclude these negotiations very soon.
Conversations about the strait come as the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports remains in effect, costing the regime hundreds of millions of dollars each day. Vice President J.D. Vance told Fox News that U.S. pressure on Iran will continue.
They're hurting in a big way. They want this thing to be over. The question is whether their system is able to give the things that are necessary for us to be happy, for us to feel like we've gotten what we need out of this particular engagement. That is still to be determined, but I do think that we've made some progress over the last few days.
With talks ongoing, Iranian proxies remain active. The Yemen-based Houthis launched a new attack on Saudi oil refineries early this morning. The Houthis have also launched several other attacks in the...
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. So we've just seen the latest on the Iran front, folks. Once again, Washington's civilian leadership is squabbling, well, in the media too, while deep into conflict. And our readiness, our warriors, and our trust in the chain of command take the hit. Why? Because of the endless ongoing attacks on the commander-in-chief and the strategy, instead of deciding, hey, politics stops at the water's edge, like is an American tradition, and working together to get this thing won. But this isn't new. From the endless proxy fights to decisions that hollowed out the force at home, the people in suits keep sending the people in uniform into harm's way and too often treating them as expendable when they push back. My guest today lived that reality. John Frankman is a former Army captain and Green Beret with 7th Special Forces Group. Before putting on the uniform, he spent 4 years in Catholic seminary studying for the priesthood with the goal of becoming a chaplain until he discerned God had a different mission for him. And when the COVID vaccine mandate hit in what was then the Department of Defense, John refused what he and many others saw as an unlawful and immoral order. And on July 1st, 2023, he voluntarily separated rather than compromise. And he didn't go quietly either. He's a signer of the Declaration of Military Accountability, as am I, and proud to have joined him in that. And he's been fighting ever since for the thousands forced out and the readiness that was destroyed. And today, he's a candidate for Congress in Florida's 1st district. You know that district. It's the one with more military members and veterans than any other in the country. I think it was Congressman Matt Gaetz's district at one point. He's running as a fighter for faith, freedom, and Florida first, medical freedom, closed borders, real accountability, and America First leadership that puts the force and the Constitution ahead of everything else. John knows what happens when civilian leaders get it wrong. He's here to talk about how we fix it. John, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show.
Thanks so much thanks for having me, Rob. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, this is More War Monday, so we always review one of the current combat operations. That's where the clip from the Iran war comes in partially. But I just wanted, as a congressman, Had you been in office, and I know this is a hypothetical, but it's based on reality, if you were faced with what Congress was faced with going into this current war, how would you have approached that?
So I would have, and the one thing that you don't have access to as a civilian is the intelligence of what actually is happening in the battlefield. So you never have that perfect picture, and you hope that the leadership at the top that makes the decisions has that information. But my thought process is that in June of 2025, when we had the bunker busters and we were told that we completely obliterated, destroyed, some kind of adjective of that, their nuclear program, I thought, well, hey, it's going to take decades for them to rebuild what they've already done. So then when we continued the aggressive operations, the offensive operations against Iran earlier this year, I had great concerns, and my concerns were raised when Joe Kent was, chose to resign from his position. So my thought process on this whole Iran war is I don't think that they are an imminent threat to our country, to our existence right now. That's not negating that they are not our friend. They have been having proxy attacks on Americans for decades and decades, over 40 years. But as far as just the threat of our country, our existence, I don't think they have that kind of capacity. So I don't think we should be involved in the capacity that we are right now and should be looking at some kind of an off-ramp. That's my thought process on it.
Well, yeah, the president's looking for an off-ramp. I have a slightly different view. I see the potential of them getting a nuclear weapon as a direct threat to the United States. And I don't have the intel that President Trump had, like you said. Anything, and that's what he was being told too. But as far as the war itself and how it's been conducted, I think it's been conducted well. And this president is the president of peace. So from that perspective, you just said that you agree that he should be looking for some kind of off ramp. What does that look like? I guess is from your perspective.
At this point, I don't even know. It's such a complex thing, and you don't even know who you're dealing with because we've killed so many layers of Iranian leadership, right? But I think it gets to a position where, the Strait of Hormuz is open, where the oil can flow freely. We're sure that their nuclear program is just not existent, which I think that we had that guarantee the year before. At some point we have to ask, well, what was the information that we had that last year? If we were told that the nuclear program was destroyed, at least it's going to take decades to rebuild, then what changed in the intel? That would be kind of the question there. So get to where you can get troops out of the area, at least directly. You get the ships out of the area, you open the strait up, maybe you just use whatever missiles are necessary if Iranian ships are blocking the strait. I'm sure that they can do different drone attacks from the shores, and that's completely changed warfare, which has made it more complex. But my thought process with Iran is obviously if they have aggression, you need to fight back. I had Green Berets and other soft members reaching out to me during the Biden years where they were basically just bait. They were left in Syria or some other surrounding country. They would get fired on. The rules of engagement were such that they basically had to be shot and killed in order to fight back. That's not right. I think every missile they send at us, we send 10, 20 back. And I think that's the level of aggression that we should have in order to kind of play whack-a-mole, because if you think you're going to fix the Middle East, it's just not going to happen, but you can certainly try to mitigate a lot of the different difficulties that you have.
Yeah, I think you're right. Those two things, that they can't block the strait, which really we don't get oil out of it anymore to any great extent, but it does affect the market and the prices everywhere, especially gasoline prices, even here. And then the nuclear piece. We got to have those two things be successful. We can't rely on some fuzzy intel. And I don't know if the intel last year was fuzzy or not, or they actually said, "Hey, we think we got it figured out, and here's where we're at." But as you know, intel doesn't work that way. So you're in this unique district, and I know you've been campaigning hard. I follow your efforts and everything on social media. What are the veterans and military members that you're talking to that you're asking to vote for you? What are they telling you about this?
I mean, with Iran, it's kind of mixed. It's not necessarily the biggest topic that they're all discussing. I mean, for them, they're more concerned about their VA healthcare, getting the benefits that they need. The nearest hospital for us is in Biloxi, and that's hours outside the district, and they only serve 20,000 veterans there. But we have two clinics here. One serves 38,000, and that's only a clinic in Pensacola. Another about 30,000. That's in Eglin Air Force Base area. And we have about 90,000 veterans who are enrolled in healthcare here, and they wonder, why did they have to travel so far for a hospital? What did they need to do to get enrolled? Other issues such as that. So those are some of the concerns. And just from the service members I know, they're just great people. They'll do what they're told to do, but just certainly want to make sure that if their lives are put at risk, there has to be a clear end state. And right now, I just don't think there's that clear end state for pushing our service members into harm's way.
Yeah. So in that district, then you're in bad need of really effective, streamlined community care. Then.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, there's just so many veterans here, 5 military bases, and so one of the complaints that I have received multiple times from people with the current congressman. So Matt Gaetz was the previous congressman here, and he's an example of a civilian congressman who can do very well with the military. I've known Matt Gaetz on many occasions. I know many of his members of his staff. He had multiple veterans on his staff. Current representative didn't have a veteran on his staff until I challenged him in the primary almost a year later. That's led to many people reaching out for help, not getting it, maybe getting ignored, not getting the help they need. So there just needs to be effective constituent services, and that's something that doesn't cost you any money. I mean, it costs you money in your budget with who you can hire on, but it doesn't. You don't need any votes. You don't need to negotiate with people in DC. That's just have the right people, personnel being policy in office and position right there. So that's one of the concerns. I have other guys who obviously PTSD is always a huge thing. Folks have been very happy when I've expressed my interest in making Ibogaine and hyperbaric chambers available to them, different experimental drugs that I know a number of Green Berets who've gone to Central South America for that treatment, and they've come back. They've broken bad habits. They don't really have PTSD. They're kind of calm. And if that's something that a service member is open to, and given the number of suicides, losing more people to suicide by many numbers during the war in Afghanistan, Iraq, then I think that's something that we need to really focus on.
Yeah, I was pleased to see the Ibogaine program be approved by the president. And this Take Care of America's Veterans Act, personally, I support it. And everything, but I see there's a lot of opposition. Are you hearing from folks about that act? Because one of its good parts is that I think it approves hyperbaric oxygen chambers, and it makes community care actually work the way it was originally intended by President Trump.
No, I've heard that from a couple of folks, and I'd be in favor of many of the efforts that Congress is pushing forward for, or that are being called for with regards to veterans, whether it's the Veteran Bill of Rights that our friend in Veteran Action is pushing forward, whether it's the Richard Starr Act to make sure that you can get your VA pay and also your retirement pay at the same time. Our service members are veterans. They're the ones that maintain our freedom. So we have a duty and an obligation. This isn't something that we're giving them as a reward. It's something that they earned. So we need to make sure that they get the care that they earned from their time in service. And there's very few people who serve within our country. So we need to make sure that they're taken care of. And representing, God willing, the most veteran densely populated district in the country with 5 major bases, veterans will never be the largest contingent in any particular place, but where they are the greatest contingent, I think they deserve a veteran and someone who's going to fight for them and for their rights.
Yeah, and that gets me to, we're almost done with this first segment, but and maybe this will bleed over the second one a little bit. So talk about your specific platform and why you're running against this incumbent. It's a big deal to challenge an incumbent.
Sure. And, I got in politics because I was forced out for not getting the COVID shot. It was while I was advocating for service members on the Hill that I realized that most members of Congress are pretty awful and they're not getting anything done. The Republicans had the majority when I was advocating. There were hearings that they could call for. They didn't do that. And I ran in the last election when Matt Gaetz was picked up for Attorney General. I dropped out when President Trump endorsed Jimmy Patronis, who I'm challenging. But over the last 2 years or a year and a half, what we've seen is Republicans have the House, they have the Senate. It's been one of the least productive sessions in Congress for decades. We're not getting any lasting conservative victories. The deficit is still going up, and we're just squandering this opportunity. And it's pretty clear that you can't just have a Republican majority. That's not the victory in itself. The victory is actually pushing through those conservative policies that the party stands for, that they run on, and particularly with Jimmy Patronis, it's kind of like you're neither hot nor cold, so I'll spit you out. I think he's much more concerned about doing what the establishment wants than representing the conservative values of this district. One, he doesn't live within the district itself, and I think he should love the place enough to live in it, to represent it. So those are just some of the concerns and some of the ways he votes, saying he wants to move on past the Epstein files, voting to cover up sexual misconduct reports against members of Congress, voting to continue FISA, which has been used to spy against Americans. You know, this is the most conservative district in the state. I think we need someone who's going to squeeze every ounce of red out of it, not someone who's going to make Mike Johnson's life easier. I think we need people who are going to convince the next generation of Republicans to vote Republican, or people to kind of convert in that way. And I just don't see him as being someone who's going to really inspire in that way. I think more just a placeholder who's being rewarded for being a good boy.
Yeah. Well, we got to take a break, John. When we come back, we'll see a clip. It's going to be orienting on Ukraine, but the segment's really about the defense budget, the Department of War budget debate that's happening right now. We'll be right back with John Frankman, candidate for Florida's Congressional District 1 in the Republican primary.
At a certain age, you stop chasing younger. You start protecting what helps you feel steady, strong, and well. Your body's collagen matters. It supports the structure of your skin, joints, and connective tissue. But as the years go by, your body needs more support from the inside. That's where Bella Grace Elixir comes in. Bella Grace Elixir combines Verisol collagen, the world's most clinically proven collagen, with asteryl astaxanthin and cat's claw in a proprietary blend designed to help support the processes that reconstruct collagen, while also offering antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. And this isn't just for women. It's for men and women who want to age with more confidence, more care, and a daily wellness routine that supports the body from within. One simple elixir, thoughtfully formulated for whole body wellness. Take care of the body that has carried you this far. Order Bella Grace Elixir today at melissahousebg.com.
What we see is Russia has intensified usage of the ballistic missiles at their overnight attacks. And because Ukraine doesn't have enough of Patriot missile systems, interceptors, to take those ballistic missiles down, people die. Unfortunately, over the last couple of weeks, we see that most of ballistic missiles hit the target simply because of the amount of them and simply because we do not have the ammunition for the Patriot missile systems. The terrible situation that is happening is that being under the sanctions for so many years, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are able to manufacture more ballistic missiles than the Western world is willing to give Ukraine interceptors. And we are right now at mercy of the countries that possess the interceptors and that are not at war, because it would take 3 to 5 years for us to manufacture the interceptors ourselves.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and my guest is former Green Beret U.S. Army Captain John Frankman, who's a candidate for Florida's District 1 in U.S. Congress in the Republican primary. And that's the district with the most military and veterans of any district in the United States of America. And John, I just wanted to dive over into budget, the Department of War's budget and foreign policy, and get your policy platform positions out on those things. And the Ukraine clip there highlights one of the concerns that I know you and I talked about on my show previously, and you've probably heard me talk about with every guest in the past 5 years, and that is that we shouldn't be getting into a fight and acting like we're in total war, not from an armed forces perspective, but from a logistics perspective, ammo perspective, intelligence perspective, and throw everything at a lost cause over in Ukraine, which we know they have no ability to defeat the Russians or even move them really off of any of their territory that they have. And the speaker there was Ukrainian and highlighting that they don't have any ammunition. And this is recent. And they want more from those of us out here. And this is what I talked about. And you've talked about before is that, well, what if America needs their ammo for America first? We shouldn't be throwing our stuff down a rat hole in a place like Ukraine when they're not even a NATO ally and everything. So that's the highlight situation, and it's happening exactly as we predicted. We're in a fight now where we need our own weapons and ammunition, and these people are wanting us to give them ours and want to get licensing to be able to build the things in their country. And that gets me to the budget issue. There's some things in the current NDAA that people are concerned about. Licensing Ukraine to build Patriot missiles is one of them. What's your take on this current debate that's happening with the National Defense Authorization Act, and how would you approach it?
Yeah, I mean, we need to first and foremost make sure that our military is prepared, having the strong military peace through strength, and having the most prepared, ready force possible so that no nation would want to mess with us, period. But it does mean using those resources to protect America and America's interests. And while the election was happening for 2024, the thought process was not another dime to Ukraine. We don't want to get involved in something that can turn into a World War III or escalate beyond our own capacity to defend. We've also been hearing about how NATO needs to step it up. And I think we need to pull completely out of Ukraine, stop giving them any funding whatsoever. If they were that large of an existential crisis or threat to Ukraine to Europe, then Europe needs to step it up. They need to get involved. They need to be spending the money. We need to be focusing on China. Now, I think our biggest existential crisis period is the $40 trillion in debt. That means that every man, woman, and child would have to pay $118,000 to the federal government if we were going to pay that off. And that could lead to the collapse of our nation. So regardless of whatever other forces are out there, if we have this deficit, that's the biggest threat. After that, we need to be focusing on China, and we're working on making sure we have enough missiles, interceptors, all those things with regard to China. Now, if it can be a lucrative situation where Ukraine wants to buy missiles from us, if there are certain partnerships where, we know they won't use it against us, our allies, our interests, fine, sell whatever. But for us to continue to give them money and get involved at a lost cause, one of the just war theory principles is don't get involved, don't fight if you can't win, because you're actually just going to lead to more destruction, damage for yourself, for your partners, etc. So they've had time to negotiate. They need to figure out what they're going to do or look to other allies, because we've been far too generous and we have enough problems of our own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was glad to see the current Trump administration's new national defense strategy put the number one priority on Western Hemisphere defense while turning towards deterring China and the Indo-Pacific. So it's official now. Do we see that happening in this budget that's going through the process now?
Yeah, I mean, I just see the large number of 1.5 trillion, and I didn't quite get the reasoning for it. I mean, until we pass actually, an audit, it's a little bit hard to justify for the American taxpayer to really increase it to a large extent. There certainly are things that need upgrades, ships, our drone program, things of that nature. I know a lot of bases, but I think one of the bigger way to make that happen is if you cut out some of the oligopolies, some of those large corporations that sort of form the military industrial complex, and make it where if someone can come up with a cheaper, faster, more creative solution with less bureaucracy, those tax dollars and that money can go a whole lot further. And that's a lot of regulatory changes that has to happen with the procurement process within the military. And I know when Gates was here, he would complain often about having these millions and millions of dollars planes that just don't work, but you have to go to a particular person so they keep ripping you off, make money off of you. I think we need to just make sure it's streamlined in the sense that everything we pay for is worth it, and get back to our capitalist free market system of competition with the defense industrial base.
Yeah. Where do you see should the priority be on recreating the manufacturing base so that we don't have to rely on foreign parts and those kind of things? I mean, there's a story out this morning that the UK's autonomous boats were reporting data to the Chinese Communist Party, the People's Liberation Army, in real time during operation because of Chinese chips, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, I think that shipbuilding is a huge piece of it. I think that's where we've fallen behind and just in our own manufacturing. So I think if we focus on bringing a lot more, whether even if it's not military manufacturing back to the United States, rather than having it, the only thing we're exporting right now is money, and we're just printing, money, and that's kind of the problem with this fiat money system that we have. And eventually, as people are getting off the dollar, that's not going to work anymore. So I think if we just focus on the economy, and there's four different elements of power. There's diplomacy, information, military, economy. So if we can focus on some of those other ones, especially that, what made us so effective in World War II is we were able to come to the table when we decided to. We were able to take the car manufacturers and other manufacturers and put it all towards the military. Let's just focus on getting our technology up, our manufacturing up in so many different sectors. I think with this particular focus right now on drones and ships, I know in Pensacola, we already have so many veterans, so many bases. There's that possibility of having shipbuilding Pensacola. I think that's a place where we could bring some federal dollars down to get some in-house shipbuilding going. But those would be some of the priorities I would like to look at.
Yeah, glad to hear that. Saronic just announced, I think yesterday, they're going to do their testing of their new 220-foot small container ship that's autonomous right here in Gulfport, Mississippi, where I live. So we're excited about that, getting more use of our port system. I think there should be at least 3 new large shipyards created along the Gulf Coast in Florida and Mississippi for sure.
Yep.
So I look forward to seeing your work on that when you win.
God willing, and the best place in the world, the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. In the Gulf of America, I might add.
Oh, yeah.
I saw, speaking of new manufacturers and getting away from the defense primes, the Palmer Luckey's company, Anduril, said they're going to do their first year of production on this low-cost cruise missile, the LCCM, and produce about 7,000 of them. Relatively speaking, the defense prime that produces our cruise missile can't make 900 in a year. That's good news, right?
Absolutely. And we have to look at, how drones have just absolutely changed the battlefield. And it's not just a measure of what's the most effective weapon, what's the most dangerous, it's what's the most cost effective. And if you have drones that can destroy millions of dollars a ship and they only cost tens of thousands of dollars, well, eventually that's going to be the new attrition. And we don't have just endless, limitless money to spend. So we need to be very much allowing for just our creativity, protecting our technology, our patents, et cetera, from any kind of Chinese, stealing, robbing, to get to the most creative, cost-effective way of using technology in order to bring it towards warfare, to just maintain that, be the global hegemon, be the most powerful nation in the world that no one wants to mess with.
Yeah, that's deterrence. That's how you, the most effective way of not getting into endless wars, right? Is to be the deterrent against all comers. When you look at the budget across the board beyond just national security, what do you see as the ways that you can bring to the table to help remove that $40 trillion in debt, which is an existential crisis?
Yeah, you need to get to one single subject spending bills. And in many ways, I was very blessed that Matt Gaetz was my congressman and I was able to really listen to a lot of what he said. But really getting to those single subject spending bills is a huge thing. When you do the omnibus bills, that just continues to drive the budget up. We're still spending at the Biden era level of spending. So you nail that down, that gets a lot of the fat out. I'm a big believer in the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment says that anything not relegated specifically and explicitly to the federal government belongs to the state level. So I think you bring those things down to the state level that our Constitution doesn't explicitly stay. So that easy one is education, get rid of the Department of Education. Maybe you get rid of a bunch of the different law enforcement agencies and just focused on just one, and then having branches of that to kind of streamline it. You could probably shrink the intelligence space, because why do we have so many intelligence agencies when they're all going to compete with each other and want to get the head start on the other, and that might prevent some information sharing. But just whenever you have more bureaucracy, you have more money spent. An easy one is obviously stopping foreign funding. If you're a household of 5 and, we went with a $118,000 deficit, if you're over $500,000 in debt, you're not giving money down the street. You're not allowing illegals into your house where you're feeding them and giving them healthcare too. You're taking care of yourself. So deporting illegal aliens, not giving any money to foreign countries, single subject spending bills. And if you change the incentive structure for congressmen, you get term limits in, you get where special interest money doesn't go into paying or buying their campaigns. You stop insider trading, that's going to change the incentive structure for members of Congress. I think it was Thomas Sowell who said, show me the incentive and I'll show you the problem.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. We got to take another break. When we come back, I want to jump into accountability, starting with accountability in the military. And what you've seen so far from the Trump administration vis-a-vis the COVID vaccine unlawful order. We'll be right back with John Frankman.
Take a look at the water you just poured. It looks clean. It tastes fine. But what's really in it? Lead, fluoride, arsenic, chlorine, pesticides, PFAS forever chemicals, pharmaceutical residues, and bacteria. Every single day, these toxins flow straight from your tap into your glass, into your family. It's time for Sentry H2O from Worldview Water. Sentry H2O is the ultimate water treatment technology, designed to remove harmful toxins, balance your water's pH, and enrich it with essential minerals like calcium and magnesium, the way nature intended. From commercial scale systems to whole house filtration, to crisp, delicious drinking water right at your kitchen sink and shower, Sentry H2O delivers cleaner, healthier water everywhere you need it. No plumber, no tools, no plumbing knowledge required. Perfect for homes, apartments, rentals, RVs, refrigerators, and more. Because everyone deserves access to clean, healthy water. Visit worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net.
How do you reconcile a strong urge to follow orders with a real crisis of conscience?
Well, first and foremost, you have to follow God's law, not man's law. And you had people who, it wasn't just a conscience thing. This was unlawful, and it was unlawful because there was no FDA-approved shot that was available to service members. They were only offered the emergency use one. So everybody who was punished was done so unlawfully, and that's why these flag officers have to be held accountable. And you were one of the few congressmen who understood that your job as a member of the House Armed Services Committee wasn't just to write a blank check to Congress. It was to be the civilian leadership over those generals to keep them in check when they stepped out of line, when they weren't being lawful.
When they weren't being lawful. Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. And my guest today is that man right there, former U.S. Army Special Forces Captain John Frankman. And John, you left the service over the COVID-19 unlawful order for the COVID-19 vaccine. You were pretty well versed in the religious aspects, but also the legal aspects. From your perspective, I mean, we've been on the stage with President Trump where he talked about this, and you asked him questions about it just before the election in 24. So from your perspective, how is it going since he got back into office on what he said he was going to do?
So unfortunately, the reinstatement process has not been what we were all expecting to be, and there really hasn't been any accountability. And when I talked to President Trump, I asked, what would you do to repair the military and how you hold people accountable? And he said he would fire their asses, but we haven't really seen any accountability. There have been people who've been tangentially fired for other things. Usually it was under the name of DEI or other such matters, but some of the biggest COVID tyrants are the ones who are at the highest levels of the Pentagon right now. And looking at the numbers, we had about 100,000 leave the military because of the vax mandate. 8,600 are considered involuntarily separated, about 80, 90K considered voluntarily separated. And of that 100K or so, and we don't have the exact number because it's not a stat that the DoD would want to track, less than 200 have come back in as far as the most recent stats I have. So that's a 500 to 1 ratio, less than one person for every 500 forced out. That's not acceptable. And the reason that's the number is the process is overly bureaucratic and difficult. There isn't full back pay. Only those who are kicked out are entitled to back pay. And even their back pay is subtracted from everything they made as a civilian. From the day they were kicked out to the day they go back in, most people don't get entitled to any. And there's been no accountability. And if you have a broken relationship, a relationship that's messed up, you don't go back to it unless there's some kind of amends. And there hasn't been that amends. So there's so much more work to be done, and the military will be a morally weaker place until then. And there's going to be no way to ensure that this doesn't happen again unless different laws are put in the books or there's accountability and people are held accountable for the laws that they already broke.
Yeah, I mean, we both know people that we worked with on the outside that are now on the inside as part of the reinstatement task force, I believe. And there's more than one. There's one in each service and one in the Department of War level, I believe. I mean, are you hearing about what the big sticking points are beyond the back pay? And I honestly thought that had been addressed, but I guess it hasn't.
Yeah, I mean, there really shouldn't have to be a reinstatement task force. It should just be a MILPER or some guidance that you're told what to do. But it comes down to, I think, a political appetite thing, and you don't really hear any members of Congress talking about this right now. I think everybody wants to check the box, say, hey, we did it, we solved the issue, let's move on. We don't want to get hung up on COVID. Maybe there's special interest money or involved. Maybe enough of their constituents aren't loud enough about it to where they actually care. But from the people on the inside, there isn't the understanding. Most people don't know, why was this an unlawful order? Secretary of War came out, said it was unlawful, but for most, there's this understanding that, hey, there's some special people who left the military, and because Trump's trying to appease them, he's going to let them back in. But really, when we're told to get shots, we just got to get shots. So what's the deal? There still is that mindset. So there hasn't been the shift in narrative. So I know the people on the task force, some are very good friends of mine. They're doing everything they can. There is one who's doing the kind of review. And once they do the review, we'll see if anything comes out about it. But I think they're still going against the bureaucracy, and we just can't underestimate the swampiness, not only in the government, but also in the Pentagon. Yeah,
I'm glad you brought up the Congress, because that's the sense I get, is that they've moved past it. And that's unfortunate, because 100,000 folks like these folks, I mean, that's a pretty big hit on readiness, right?
It absolutely is. And, we have those stats based on how many people left the military within the first year of the mandate coming out, looking at how many religious exemptions were filed or how many people left, even with regards to that. But it is absolutely a huge number. And maybe those people, they would have eventually retired or left or med boarded, but it's just them doing it sooner and all at once. And that's where you have this particular group that is a lot more morally sensitive, a lot more focused on their conscience, on following the Constitution. Many of them are very talented at their jobs and what they do. We know pilots. I was a special operator. It took a lot of money to put me through the training I did. So that is the hit on readiness. But I'm more concerned about the hit on the moral capacity of the service. And with regards to Congress, like what I said with Matt Gaetz, what the House Armed Service Committee should do is they should be holding military leadership accountable. They should be the civilian leadership over the military, not just the the daddies that write checks to the DOD because they say they need it. We're not their sugar daddies. We're the civilians that overlook them. So I would hope that we see that, and would be my intention, God willing, if you get elected.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
Introducing Worldview Tube Vault. Over 35 years of radio broadcasts, television programs, documentaries, and ebooks. Plus, Worldviewpedia, our powerful search engine for instant worldview and Bible research. Join for as little as $7.99 a month. And now, Vault members get something brand new, courses. Our very first course is here, the Book of Revelation with Brannon House. 53 in-depth lessons, complete with overview quizzes, walking you verse by verse through one of the most important books in Scripture. Getting started is simple. Go to worldviewtube.com/vault and join today. Already a member? Visit worldviewtube.com, click the person icon in the top right, and log in. Then hover over Vault in the menu and select Courses. That's it. You're in. Join WorldviewTube Vault today at worldviewtube.com/vault.
Friends, this is Brandon Howes. For more than a year now, I've been teaching through the book of Revelation, and the response from you has been overwhelming. You've asked me again and again, when are you going to put this study in print? We want to mark it up. We want to share it with our families. Well, it's here. My brand new 2-volume commentary on the book of Revelation, verse by verse, chapter by chapter. This is not a watered down, allegorized replacement theology approach to Revelation. This is a literal, grammatical, historical study, the way the Lord intended his word to be read. And I connect the prophecy of Revelation to the headlines you're watching unfold right now, the rise of global government and the convergence of end-time events the Lord Jesus warned us about. Folks, we are living in serious days, and there has never been a more important time to understand what God has told us about what is coming. Get your 2-volume Revelation commentary today at worldviewstore.com. That's worldviewstore.com.
But I really want to move on. Yes, sir. So, lifelong Republican, I'm going to Trump all 3 elections. Now, on that note, one of the biggest reasons I voted for Trump was the freedom of law. And right now, look the way that things are going with the Epstein files.
Can I be honest with y'all of the Epstein files? So then ultimately, me included, we all voted to release every single one of them. Now, here's the part that nobody really knew is the child pornography, the gross, heinous acts that were in there. There's all these things now that are starting to come to light. There were those documents that now you can't prosecute the dead pedophile over. So this was, every document is out there. I have no desire to see the smut that's in those documents. But I really want to move on away from something that I feel like is a dark, gross chapter of America where a dead pedophile was controlling the agenda of the United States of America. I want to go to work. And I feel like there's no more work to be done on those documents.
But at the same time, particularly for the victims, and I worked as a military sexual trauma counselor. So I
don't want to re-traumatize those victims, put their names out in the public domain either.
Their names don't have to be out there, but accountability is something that is so important. And if we know that there are people who are perpetrators, who have harmed children, we need accountability.
Yeah, well, it is all out there for the full world to go investigate. So nothing, there's nothing, to my knowledge,
saying, hey, this was dark, and the people that were engaged in this behavior are going to be held accountable because we have a higher standard.
And I give there's me. The trauma that I deal with has been more on the side of people that have been first responders dealing with PTSD. And so I get very sensitive about re-traumatizing somebody by open wounds. I just want to go to work. And every day that we deal with this issue, I'm afraid we're just not getting focused on trying to save our country. They're out there. People want to read them, they can read them.
Yeah, so for those of you who are watching and wondering, what was that clip of? Well, I'm John Frankman, former Special Forces Green Beret, candidate for Florida's 1st Congressional District. And that was Representative Jimmy Petronis, who I'm challenging in the primary. So he took over for Matt Gaetz after Matt Gaetz was picked up for Attorney General. And he was asked about the Epstein files at a Republican executive committee here in Okaloosa County, which is where I live. And his response was rather troubling. He kind of said that we didn't know what was in the files. There were a lot of dark things in there, and then goes on to say, I want to go back to work. There's no more work to be done on those documents. And then when pressed for accountability, moves forward into talking about that they're all out there. They're there for the world to see. It shouldn't actually take my job, my working on those documents to actually fix the problem. So this is a point that I've brought up. I think that one of my tenets is make accountability great again. And it's wrong for us to have a 2-tier justice system where elites, powerful people involved in potentially intelligence agencies are able to get away with harming children, sexually trafficking children. And right now, what we've seen so far within Department of Justice has not been satisfactory. I think it's amazing that of the Republicans, there were only, the 4 that were willing to sign a discharge petition in order to release these documents, especially given that this was an issue that everybody was kind of fired up for in 2024. So wanting that kind of accountability, that's something that I'm pressing for. And it doesn't just relate to COVID accountability or accountability for Epstein. It relates to COVID accountability. It relates to 2020 election, January 6th. And I will pass it back to Colonel Menes.
Hey, John, thanks. Welcome back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the struggles of live TV. Luckily, we had a guest on that knows how to be a host. I appreciate you, John.
Of course.
Look, that Epstein clip wasn't just about Epstein. I think you covered it really well, but I do a lot of work in the weaponization of government space right now, John, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what you'll do as a congressman in order to do things like set things right. Like the Epstein thing is one of those issues that, look, Epstein wasn't and Ghislaine Maxwell are not the only perpetrators in this. There are more perpetrators, and the American people, and I'm one of them, can't understand why more perpetrators aren't being tracked down, investigated thoroughly, and prosecuted where we're able.
Yeah, absolutely. And, every branch has their own particular powers that come with it. One of the powers that you have for Congress is to do hearings. I also think that apart from legislating hearings, you are a public voice. So you can use your public voice, your platform, in order to spread and direct the American people. So want to use that platform and use all the formation I received, the 4 years of Catholic seminary, the systematic theology degree, the special forces, Green Beret training, everything I've learned through fighting for COVID, and bring that to bear as a public voice. But further, we have the power of the purse. And if certain agencies aren't cooperating and doing their job, why should we be supporting their budget? That's where we can really hit them where they hurt and make that happen. So, I will not be afraid. I love the president, stand for the things that he ran on for sure. We'll support that mission. America first. MAGA isn't just owned by one person. That is a whole movement in and of itself of making America great again. And we'll fight to do so. But when it comes to going against party leadership, I'm willing to stand up against them. And I have my past proof to show that I'm willing to do it, because I was willing to forego my job as a Green Beret, standing on principle, even at great personal cost. So if I need to go full Thomas Massey and do a discharge petition, if it's for medical freedom amendment, if it's for a pro-life amendment, if it's for releasing files of some sort, I will not be afraid to sign those documents, put my name on the line, and know that I might have a bunch of money thrown at me and a primary challenger coming in 2 years. But guess what? If I win, it's not because of the special interest groups. It's because of the people who are getting active, volunteering, and coming up and showing up to vote.
Yeah, exactly right, man. Sorry about the beeping in the background, folks, but we're out of power and we're on emergency power. And that's just a fact of life on that. So speaking of going back onto being aggressive and fighing this, even if you have to go against the president. He took Thomas Massey out with about a $32 million spend. Do you think you'll be able to get elected in a primary with that position? Or how are the folks on the ground talking about this kind of stuff, I guess is my question.
Yeah, so there's some folks who are just not as politically involved. So they think that Thomas Massey is a terrible person who's trying to disrupt the president's agenda. And the difficulty, and politics well enough as I do, that there are people who do know all the players. They know their positions. They probably have met you already because they're so involved. You have another kind of layer of people who might watch news pretty regularly, but it's just Fox. They get whatever mailers they're sent. They kind of believe sort of the lines that they're told there. So they're somewhat involved, but maybe kept in a certain way. And there's largely age demographics based on that. But a lot of people, younger folks, really love Thomas Massey. A lot of them can't understand why was so much money spent against him, and see it as a problem that Republicans are fighting each other so much and willing to kind of, I'd say, waste millions and millions of dollars in a primary when we are all polymarket prediction markets say going to lose the House in the 2026. So I'd rather see resources pushed in some particular way. Would I be able to withstand a $30 million primary? Probably not. That's crazy amounts of money, and I don't have it yet. God willing, get elected. We'll see where popularity goes. And my problem right now is just name recognition, name ID. If you're on X, probably doing okay. But just getting out to those folks that might not come to the Republican clubs, but still vote pretty regularly.
Yeah, it's can you hear me okay?
I got you. Yep.
Yeah. It's tough. What are your voters talking about regarding lawfare? I mean, lawfare and the Epstein thing is kind of like we hear from our congressmen. They don't really want to talk about that kind of stuff because they think we've moved beyond that. But I interview one week. Every show I did that week was a lawfare victim whose case is actively being pursued right now.
Well, there's a lot of people who are concerned about how the Florida State, the Department of, I'm trying to think, the DCO, the one that takes children, so Department of Children, Families, a number of kind of legally kidnapping of children because the parents aren't doing the medical procedures that the government deems necessary. That's a huge thing where they're seeing government intrusion even at the Florida State level. So I've had Joy Zaroff and her daughter was basically kidnapped from her and reaching out to her and hearing what's going on there, going to that court case. That's one of the areas. There's a lot of flock cameras going on. So although Democrats aren't in power right now, that's a huge issue here, largely thanks to the governor race and a lot of issues being highlighted there. So there is concerns about our Fourth Amendment rights not being spied upon. And AI data centers is another area where we're kind of worried about government intrusion to some way. It's obviously has its environmental concerns, but it's also now how is this AI capacity going to be linked in with the flock cameras to further spy on Americans?
Yeah. What are they saying about flock cameras? I mean, it just hit my radar here locally in on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi just in the last week. Somebody told me, "Hey, there's a flock camera 100 yards from your house." And I wasn't aware that I voted to allow those. Are most municipalities stepping up, and is Congress going to do anything to help, or should they?
Congress is probably not going to do anything because you and I both know how useless they are, right? I mean, they voted to continue FISA spying, which has been used and weaponized against Americans. So I think you got to go back to the people who want safety and liberty deserve neither, will have neither kind of quote. Largely conservative circles, people are against it. I think there's some police who've seen that it's made their job easier, but there's always the concern of who's going to use that tool when they're in power. And I think just going through COVID, as short memory span as we have, we need to look into that and ask that question, who's going to use this later on? So I'm happy. Most of the counties are stepping up with regards to AI data centers in the area. So some of them are given outright bans. And that's largely, like I said, thanks to the governor race that's happening here. But with flock, I'd hope that there is some kind of a national ban, but within the state, we need to pressure our state legislature. And I do have some concerns about our state moving forward when DeSantis leaves.
Yeah. On artificial intelligence, there's a big debate about at the federal level about whether the feds should have one federal standard and regulatory piece of legislation, or whether the states do it at the state level. I'm a big believer in the states are the laboratories for finding the best solution. So I hesitate when I hear that even the president say things like, well, we can't have the states doing, a mixture of regulation and all that and everything. It's just got to be a federal one and stop the states from doing that. But doesn't that violate the 10th Amendment of the Constitution?
It does. And that's where it would be nice to see legislators actually following it, where, hey, we're going to make it a state issue, but it becomes something that's so grave and we have such consensus by things being done in a certain way. Let's make it an amendment then. So it would be awesome if we saw, hey, Florida handles it this way, California another. What's working? What concerns do we have? Okay, let's go on ahead and let's make some kind of amendment with regards to artificial intelligence where you're not doing deep fakes in a certain way or whatever. But I do appreciate that perspective.
As a federal legislator, will you look for the best ways to implement guardrails, especially on military decision making and those kind of things? I wrote an article last year that got published. I think it was in Stars and Stripes about not letting artificial intelligence into the nuclear decision making and order giving process.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds dangerous. Yeah, that sounds like a thing to definitely do. We would not want to see a nuke go off because AI thinks, oh, well, or they read something wrong, or, you have to have that human touch. Absolutely. So I think that would be a smart thing to kind of work within the NDAA, because that gets passed regardless, and maybe even just making it another law outside of the NDAA itself.
Yeah, yeah. On this accountability piece, John, the accountability of like federal prosecutors, federal judges that are continuing this lawfare, and it's holdovers from the cases. A lot of them are holdovers from the Biden administration, but they're still being prosecuted by the Trump DOJ. Is there anything that you as a congressman will be able to do to try to mitigate that and get some of these cases thrown out that really shouldn't have ever been cases in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, certainly raising awareness on it specifically, or maybe having some, I don't know, looking at it and seeing if there's some kind of pattern where you can have the laws, changed or mitigated in some way or shape or form. I'd have to look at the kind of case by case basis and then see what kind of an overall catch there can be. But I mean, the fact is that that conservatives have been attacked by the government more than Democrats have, that there's been a weaponization against them, period. We've seen it during January 6th, with regards to the 2020 election, with the IRS. Well, I just try to get rid of the IRS, period, and go to a flat tax, a national sales tax, or some combination of the two. And that could, but maybe just dismantling the federal bureaucracy. It's just too much. We have unelected bureaucrats making laws for people, putting rules together, and then prosecuting people on those rules. So there needs to be some kind of relief. And certainly with regards to constituent services, if that were to happen to anyone within my district, would then fight with those appropriate agencies.
Yeah, the question about helping folks, I think that's a big issue, especially for younger people. I mean, they look at somebody like me, and I talk about how I believe in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, but they don't see classical liberalism doing things like protecting them from outlandish university prices and this whole social culture of being told you got to go to college to get a good job, and then not being able to get a good job after you go $200,000 or more in debt, and the housing market being crushed by these 20 million illegals that were brought into this country, over and above the already millions and millions and millions of illegals that were here already. And the illegals are getting benefits both at the federal and state level. And you've got young people that bought into the Charlie Kirk coalition that really put President Trump back in office in a miracle. It's a historical miracle. A lot of them are looking at us going, you guys, you're not showing me that you're serious about this. What needs to happen in Congress to show those folks that we're serious about it? Because I'm serious about it. I want to enact new policies that do things like reduce the debt, reduce the size of the federal bureaucracy, deport all the illegals, and those kind of things. But how do we convince them that we really mean it?
Well, Congress just has to do something. They have to pass legislation. And I think back to an event last Thursday night where Jimmy Patronis was. All he talked about is the amazing work that Trump's doing, how evil Democrats are, that Democrat socialists are taking over. That's not winning young people. They need to see action. They need to see the promises kept. So you have to get the mass deportations going. We can't just stop and start talking about amnesty. There needs to be the mass deportations, period, end of story. So never stop with that. And don't make a bunch of commercials about it either, because we just care about numbers, not publicity. Paying down the federal deficit is a huge thing, shrinking the size of the federal government, because I believe that the inflation, the reason why everything is so expensive is because we've been printing out this fake money, printing out so much money, and that's just made everything cost more. So if you don't actually pay down the deficit, if you don't actually shrink the size of the federal government, people will never actually know that you're serious. So making these substantial changes, I think getting government funding out of school systems, because when schools know that they can charge more because the government's going to spend more, then they raise their prices too. Let's get rid of all of that. Let's go back to that free market economy that makes sense in all aspects of business. Let's get some antitrust laws out there to break up some of these oligopolies and corporations so that there can be more competition. There's so many different creative ideas that Congress can do. They're just not doing it. They're just focused on one thing at a time, and it's often political. The SAVE Act, no reason it shouldn't have passed, but if they were serious, they would have had it legislated on day one when they came back in so that Trump could have signed it on January 20th when he was sworn in. Anyone who thinks that Congress is actually fighting right now, if you think that they care about COVID, you're lying to yourself. You think they care about Epstein, you're lying to or sorry, not Epstein, but Fauci, you're lying to yourself. They had 18 months to hold them accountable. They didn't. Same thing with the SAVE Act, everything else. So they need to stop thinking of just staying in power and treating the majority as the win itself. They need to actually get wins, because I'm sorry, they're going to lose the young vote next time. And I think that's what's going to happen if they keep pushing these establishment candidates in the primaries.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I appreciate you coming in and sharing this platform. The election is August 18th.
Yep, early voting has happened. That's right. So early voting right now, and the election is August 18th. So you live in Florida's 1st District, please vote for me. If you know somebody, please tell them to. And if you want to support, go to frankmanforflorida.com.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Good luck, my friend.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. I'll see you on Training Tuesday on Worldview YouTube.